Picture this. It's 1347, and four Genoese trading ships limp into Messina harbor. The crew, most are already corpses. The survivors are delirious with fever, their necks and groins bulging with black, apple-sized boils that leak pus and blood. They've just escaped a city where Mongol catapults have been hurling rotting bodies over the walls for weeks. These dying sailors are carrying something that will kill half of Europe within 5 years, and they have no idea. Let's rewind 1 year to where this nightmare begins. It's 1346, and the Mongol Golden Horde, led by Khan Jani Beg, has the walled city of Caffa completely surrounded. This isn't some backwater village. Caffa is one of the richest Genoese trading colonies in the known world, a glittering nexus where Silk Road caravans meet Mediterranean merchant fleets, where fortunes are made trading spices, silk, precious metals, and slaves. Jani Beg has a serious problem. Caffa's fortifications are formidable, walls rising 30 feet high, 6 feet thick at the base. His army has been camped in the surrounding plains for months, making zero progress. Then something changes. But it's not a breakthrough. It's a breakdown. Soldiers in the Mongol camp start dying, not from combat wounds or starvation, from something they've never seen before. First comes the fever and chills. Then the swellings appear. Grotesque buboes, egg-sized lumps in the groin, armpits and neck. They turn purple, then black. They rupture, leaking blood and pus. Within 3 to 5 days of the first symptom, you're dead. It's bubonic plague, spread by fleas living on the black rats that infest every medieval military encampment. And it's tearing through Jani Beg's forces like an invisible scythe. Now, here's where Jani Beg makes a decision that will literally reshape world history. Faced with mounting casualties and a siege going nowhere, he looks at the growing pile of corpses, bloated, blackened, horrifying, and sees a weapon. He orders his military engineers to load the plague-riddled bodies into their trebuchets and catapults, then launch them over Caffa's massive walls. Imagine you're inside that city. You're a Genoese merchant who's survived months of siege. Your food stores are holding. Your walls are intact. You actually feel relatively safe. Then decomposing corpses start arcing through the sky and crashing into your streets, your courtyards, your water wells. Plague-infected fleas scatter everywhere, seeking new hosts. A Genoese notary named Gabriele de Musi, who may not have been there personally but collected eyewitness accounts, later writes, "What seemed like mountains of dead were thrown into the city." He's probably exaggerating the scale, but the core horror is real. The defenders frantically try to dump the corpses into the sea, but it's futile. The plague has breached the walls no army could crack. By late 1346, people inside Caffa are dying by the hundreds daily. The Genoese merchants face an impossible choice: stay and die, or flee and risk the journey. They choose flight. They load their most valuable goods, and their infected fleas, onto their fastest ships and abandon the colony. 4 of these vessels set sail for Messina in Sicily, a major Genoese-controlled port. Here's what makes this so insidious. Bubonic plague has an incubation period of 3 to 7 days. When these ships depart Caffa, the sailors probably feel fine. Maybe a few have mild fevers, but nothing alarming. They have no concept of disease vectors, no understanding of how plague spreads. They just know they're escaping hell. The voyage takes weeks, possibly stopping at other ports for supplies. By the time the 4 ships reach Messina in October 1347, they've become floating morgues. When harbor officials see the dead and dying crew members, they immediately order the ships to leave. But by then, the infected rat fleas have already scurried down the mooring ropes onto the docks. The plague has entered Western Europe. Within days, Messina's residents start showing symptoms. The authorities panic and forcibly expel the Genoese ships. But where do dying sailors go? They scatter to other ports: Genoa, Venice, Marseille. Every harbor they touch becomes a new outbreak point. The progression is terrifyingly rapid. One ship reaches Marseille in November 1347. By January 1348, half the city is dead. Bodies stacked in the streets because there aren't enough living to bury them. From Marseille, the plague spreads inland through France like spilled ink on parchment. It reaches Paris by June 1348, killing an estimated 50,000. It crosses the English Channel, likely on merchant ships from Calais, and hits England by August 1348. Let me give you some numbers that should chill your blood. Florence, 60,000 dead out of a population of 120,000. Siena, construction on the magnificent cathedral stops mid-project because there aren't enough workers left alive, and it remains unfinished to this day. Venice, 600 people dying per day at the peak, bodies dumped in plague pits or floated out to sea. Across Europe, the population drops from roughly 75 million to 50 million in just 5 years. 1/3 of the continent gone. Could any of this have been prevented? If those 4 ships had been turned away before docking, if Messina's harbour masters had been more vigilant, would the Black Death have been contained? Probably not. Plague was already spreading through other Mongol-controlled territories, and other merchant ships would inevitably have carried it westward. But there's something uniquely tragic about being able to trace this direct line. From Jani Beg's desperate tactical innovation to terrified Genoese merchants fleeing with contaminated cargo, to the dock workers in Messina who tied up those death ships, every single link in this chain seems so preventable in hindsight. Yet no one had the knowledge to break it. The Black Death doesn't just kill, it fundamentally restructures European civilization. Massive labor shortages give surviving peasants unprecedented bargaining power, accelerating the end of feudalism and serfdom. The Church's complete inability to stop the plague or explain it shatters its spiritual authority. Art becomes obsessed with mortality. We get the danse macabre, memento mori, skeletons in every painting. Scientific thinking begins to challenge religious dogma. The Renaissance, the Reformation, the modern world, all of it grows from soil fertilized by plague victims. And the chain of causation traces back to a frustrated Mongol Khan who, in a moment of tactical desperation outside a Crimean port city, accidentally invented biological warfare. Jani Beg, ironically, survives the initial plague outbreak. He retreats from Caffa and returns to his capital at Sarai. He dies 2 years later in 1348, possibly assassinated in a political coup, possibly from plague after all. The historical sources are contradictory. But his legacy? That's written in the mass graves stretching from Sicily to Sweden, in the abandoned villages across Europe, in the bones of 50 million dead. So here's what haunts me about this story. Jani Beg was trying to win a siege, just a tactical problem. He had no way of knowing those catapulted corpses would trigger a continental catastrophe. Which makes me wonder, what decisions are we making right now? What seemingly isolated choices that will echo through centuries in ways we can't possibly predict? If this story disturbed you, subscribe. I release a new hidden piece of history every week that will change how you see the world. And drop a comment. Should Jani Beg's corpse bombardment count as the first act of biological warfare, or was it just a desperate siege tactic with unintended consequences? Historians are still debating this. I want to know where you stand.